Okay, documentary response, body paragraphs now. Let's tackle how to handle those. So we've talked about how to do the introduction. We've talked about the layers. So the biggest thing with the body paragraphs, remember you must have a topic sentence in each body paragraph. This is still an essay. I just say this to remind you to keep you on track because again, with research papers, it can get off track without our really being that aware of it because again, we're trying to grapple with our facts and how to wind those into the body paragraphs, which I'm going to explain a little bit about now. All right, so each body paragraph, so let's talk about body paragraph 1. It's a little paragraph sign there. Okay, body paragraph 1, you need to have, okay, we've still got to use transition words and phrases. They haven't gone anywhere. They're still very important. Again, they're small words. They seem formulaic, but it's a formula for your success because they wind the reader very clearly into that topic sentence. All right, so we're going to, I'm just going to use my traditional ones. You can mix it up, but here we go. So it would be something like first. All right. So first, and here is your first topic sentence, right? So first topic sentence, which is going to be it could be a reason that supports your thesis. Or it could be a smaller aspect of the thesis. So, for example, let's think about that. With the thesis I was just working with for 180 days, that if I had the idea that funds should be distributed in a more equal way for school funding so that all schools were funded more equally and had equal access to resources despite what neighborhood or or even state or whatever that one lives in, right? You could have like the first body paragraph might say different aspects of that. It could be something like either a reason or an aspect. So it could be like maybe an aspect about, okay, something like this. Like I might say first, in order to help all students succeed, that all students need to have equal access to an education. And I might then give that body paragraph about this equal access and then looking at what would I do in that. So that might be my topic sentence, but then I would need to, so that's our first layer, right? Then I'm going to put one. Second layer, explain. Explain. So in your explanation, so topic sentence, one sentence, always, right? In your explanation, 2 to 3 sentences-ish, could be 4, but 2 to 3 sentences explaining that. So with the topic sentence I just gave, that all students should have equal access to an education, I would explain that. I would not assume that the reader may think they do, right? The reader may be out of school for a long time, or just, I don't know, sometimes if we're, whatever our experiences, we kind of have a sort of, sometimes we live in a bubble. We really live in a bubble now, but sometimes we live in a bubble and we just kind of think everybody has the same experience that we do because we're just not aware, right? So we might explain that different school districts, even different schools within the same district, can have vastly different funding, and thereby the students have vastly different experiences in their education. So even though it's all public education, that might be part of my explanation, right? So when I would explain that a little bit more, right? So then next I need my evidence. All right, so I need my evidence and example. So because this is the research paper, your evidence needs to come from research, and if you're doing the documentary response, it has to come from the film. So you need both. You need both parts. You need the film. You've got to keep the focus on the film. and you need evidence from research. It really doesn't matter which order it works in. It's just what is most effective. How does it work out to be the most clear? So your evidence and example is an illustration of this point. So I'm going to put a film. So if you're doing the documentary response, you must actually talk about the film in every single paragraph. Yes, because otherwise it tends to get away from us, and all of a sudden we're writing about the issue, but we've left the film behind. So this is going to be, whoa, I just dropped my little marker here. So I'm going to give you like this big this is like an emergency, don't do this sort of thing. This can happen so easily, where we do our introduction, we summarize the film, we give our transition, we explain both sides, we give our thesis, everything's going well, and then our body paragraphs, we have topic sentences on that issue, say of equitable school funding, and we have examples from our research, and we never mention the film again until the conclusion. No, 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 don't do this. Let me say it again. No, this is very, 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 very bad to do, because then you have lost control of the whole situation here, right? So it's gone completely off the rails. You have to keep the focus on the film, the film, the film, the film, if you choose this option. So that means every paragraph, you have to talk about the film. You've got to keep that tight focus on it. So, your evidence, so you have to have evidence and examples from the film. The good news is, because this length requirement is 5 to 7 pages, because it takes longer to build a research paper effectively, you need some more space to do that. But the good news is, when you follow this plan, you will be able to do that, because your paragraphs will likely be longer. All right. So you've got your topic sentence, you explain it. Now you need evidence. So let's say we're using our evidence from the film, right? So evidence from the film might be the lack of resources they had in the school in the film, right, at DC Met. And you could point to some specifics about that, about the budget cuts they were having to do. Specifically, I can think of when the principal was having to look at, well, we have to have this person at least part-time, we have to have, like a school counselor at least part-time or something, but they had to look at cutting, the art and music and that sort of thing, right? So that's the sort. I mean, you can look in. You would get a specific example from the film. Don't do it. I just didn't do it off the top of your head. You would say, for example, in the film, and you describe that really specifically, and then you cite it, because I'll try to talk about that a little more at the end. But this is a research paper, so that's where you cite parenthetically, like you learned how to do in English 120, right? Parenthetical citation. The parenthetical citation is like the arrow that points the reader to your work cited. So let's say they go, oh, I want to see that part of the film. That is such great evidence for that idea. I never thought about it that way. Well, if you don't give a parenthetical citation, how do they know where in the movie it is? How do they know where in the article it is? They have no idea, right? So you have to create a trail. And so your parenthetical citation, or also called in-text citation, is your trail. All right. But you need evidence and example from the film, and then you also have to have evidence and an example from your research. Okay, so these are the articles that you are going to look up on the issue. So the Napa Valley College website databases are fantastic. I don't know, with us now all in the purple category tier, for COVID, if the library is, I'm not really sure what happened, if the library is still having open hours. If so, that's great, because you could go in person and perhaps talk to a librarian. But I know for sure, either way, because I've done it, they have a great option on the library website at Napa Valley College to do a Zoom meeting with the librarian, and they are super helpful. They can really help you find some great articles. So if you're searching and you're not finding articles that are really helpful to you, then by all means, please do use that resource. Just Zoom into the librarian, and he or she can be very helpful in that regard. All right, so every single body paragraph, you want to go through this format. So where you are going to layer it, right? You got your topic sentence, you explain it, you give your evidence from the film, and then you give your evidence from your research. Again, this could be switched. The research could come first and the film second. That's okay either way, whatever seems to work well in that situation for you. But they both have to be there, all right? So you just want to make sure that you don't do it all from research and there's no film in there. Huge mistake. But you also need your research that you've looked up because this is a research paper. Now, what you also don't want to do, this is the only paper for the semester that you are not going to put your own examples in because that's just not the norm in a research paper. So you are not going to talk about when I was in school, and although that might be, effective in another, other types of papers that we've written, we're not going to do that in the research paper. Okay, so no I. You should be using like one. No. So this case we're going to do, you should never really use you in a research paper. You should never use you in an essay unless it's what we call directional process when you're giving directions. You're not doing that in any of this class. But you, in this case, in a research paper, no I. So you're going to either use one, which is sort of the universal human experience, or just phrase it without that. All right. So any of that is okay. So basically, you must have a minimum of 3 body paragraphs, right? And you must have at least 5 paragraphs total. Again, your paragraphs will probably be longer because this is, you need time and space to do all this. Oh, let's see. Topic sentence, 1 sentence, explanation 2 to 3, evidence, example 1, 2 to 3, evidence, example 3, 2 to 3. And then also number 4, you should analyze it. 2 to 3, right? So meaning analyze, again, it's your focused thoughts on this issue that supports that topic sentence. That's kind of, in a sense, the fun part. You get to give your ideas in that focused way, all right? So by the time you do all that, that's quite a few sentences. That's 1, even say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 12 sentences in one paragraph. So you're going to build it that way. If somehow you do all that and you still are not at the length requirement of 5 full pages, you could add another body paragraph, which means another reason or another aspect of your idea. You could also do that. Or you could go back into your same body paragraphs and look and say, did I explain my example enough? Do I have an example for both? If not, could I explain it further? Could I even add another example of the same illustration that's maybe even more clear? I mean, or some facts or something like that. You could develop it further that way. So again, you want to, we've got what to do in the intro, what to do in the body paragraphs, and then let's just talk about the conclusion a little bit. So I'm going, before I erase, I'm going to bring it closer just to, I hope that this can help. Let's see if you can read my writing. You should get extra credit. But I really try to be clear. And of course, when I'm looking at it, it's backwards, so it's hard to tell. All right, very good. So after that, we are going to, I want to talk about the conclusion. Okay, well, I'm trying to erase here. Okie doke. All right, so your conclusion, of course, you're going to touch back on that thesis. You're going to touch back on the intro. You're going to wrap it up. It needs to be a full conclusion. So, 4 to 7 sentences approximately. So your conclusion. So you want to touch back on the intro. I would, again, touch back on the title of the film. I'm going to put title of a film. That should come back. You want to touch back on your thesis. Okay, and you want to give closure. I'm going to wrap it up, no cliffhangers, and here's the big thing, no new info. Okay, so, and I'd say probably 4 to 7 sentences-ish, if it's 8, that's fine, probably not less than 4. Touch back on the intro. Whatever you mentioned in the intro, your intro and conclusion should match. So touch back on the intro, touch back on the title of the film. You should mention the title of the film again. Touch back on your thesis. When I say touch back, I don't mean repeat it word for word like a rerun, right? Your reader shouldn't be going, "How I read that somewhere. Where's that?" I mean, but you're saying the same idea again, just in different wording. And give some closure. Wrap it up. The reader should have a satisfying end to this. It shouldn't come to, like an abrupt halt. Whoa, okay, there. I guess we're done, right? No. So sometimes if the conclusion isn't coming to you, and it feels like that's what you're doing. I mean, try to take a break and come back to it. Obviously, like a little time, like a day, would help. But if you don't have that, if that's just not how it's working out, even an hour, even 15 minutes, I mean, would help. But just sometimes we're just so in this mode and we've been working on it and it's just not coming. So just try to give yourself a breather, give your mind a break, and then come back to it. And this is very important, no new information. This is not the time to have a new point. This is not time to have new facts and new examples or the other thing is new info. Don't disagree with your thesis. I mean that, don't just say, oh, well, like going with my sample thesis of more equitable funding for schools. That's more even across the board for all schools and all school districts and that sort of thing. You don't want, if that was your thesis, you don't want at the end of, I understand why they don't do that, though. It's really hard to navigate through all these funds and bureaucracy or something. No, just stay focused, right? All right. So, but I meant to mention, this is very important. So in your body paragraph, I said you need to mention the controversy in the intro. In your body paragraphs, you do need to address the opposition to whatever your idea is. You're not arguing for them, no, but you are addressing their concerns. Either show why your view is more compelling than their view is very reasonable. You're treating it as a reasonable concern. But you're after that reasonable concern, you show that your view is somehow more compelling. Or you would show maybe how you can address their concerns and still argue for your point. So you're refuting their claim. But I like to phrase it in these two ways because sometimes when we think of refuting, we think we got to slap them into place. We don't want to do that, right? Because we don't want to insult them. They're not going to come to our side if we're insulting them, right? So we need to be have a spirit of goodwill about it all right? So I'm going to show you this conclusion information, and then I'll just write that down about the opposition really quick. All right, so remember, you need all of that for a fully developed conclusion. All right, so let's talk about somewhere in the body of your paper, and I'm only looking for you to address one major concern of the opposition. It should be a major concern. It shouldn't be something that, like, really, that's not a concern. Whoever would think of that? It should be a major concern, right? So, but I'm really only looking for you to do one. You can do more, but you don't have to. I'm looking for somewhere in the body of your paper for you to do one. So let's just talk about that really quickly. Again, though, you must support your topic sentence. So there has to be your topic sentence that supports your thesis, and you're not arguing for them. You're not like just saying, okay, now your turn, person with opposite view. You're just saying, while some may argue that, and then say their idea and explain it, as reasonable, but then however, and then you go into your point, something like that, right? So opposing view, you want to explain their view neutrally neutrally as a serious concern. But don't argue for them. Don't switch teams here. Let them argue for themselves. Okay, but don't argue for them. Argue for yourself. You need your own topic sentence, but how you can do it is, one, show why your idea is more compelling. Or number two, show how you can address their concerns. All right. So let's think about this specifically with my sample thesis that um, as shown in 180 days that schools should have more equitable funding that's equal across the board and it's not dependent on one's neighborhood or state or whatever, right? That we have equal federal funding for schools across the board. All right, so someone in opposition to that they might argue that it would be very complicated to do that because that's not how it's set up now. That often the funding may come from property taxes, and that varies widely from state to state, varies from city to city, and even within cities that can vary quite a bit. So one might argue that it would be very complicated to change that whole structure, right? But showing why it's more compelling, I might say yes, it might take a little time to figure this out, but our students are worth it. That it's worth it to ensure that every student has equal access to public education, regardless of where they live. That they have a safe and academically fulfilling place to go to school, and that sort of thing. I could make that compelling argument. You do need evidence, so you do, even when you are arguing for the opposition, when you're really not, not arguing for the opposition, you're addressing the opposition. You do need evidence, right? So I could show evidence from the film on that and from my research, and then I might show how I could address their concerns, either instead of. If you can really do either one. Like, for example, in this sample, I might talk about how while it seems complicated, perhaps it's not complicated. I honestly am not an expert on this particular topic, but perhaps there are other countries that have figured this out that we could look to for a model. I don't have one in mind, but that would be research, right? So maybe I have no idea what country to pick, but just say that there's a country that has figured this out, that has across the board funding for schools, and it doesn't vary by, in our case, state to state. Maybe there it's province to province or something like that, but it's more equitable. Then I could, in my research, I could show that they have figured this out and that we could model this plan on something that they've already figured out and then just modify it for our needs, wherever we are different, right? So that would be a way of showing how to address their needs, right? So, but you do need to deal with the opposition somewhere in the body of your paper. You don't want to pretend like nobody disagrees, because somebody does. That's what makes it an argument. That's what makes it a clear idea. Someone should disagree with that. And again, it needs to be whatever is an actual concern, not one that nobody's ever heard of before, right? So, sometimes we're not sure what that is. You could even go to Google and just Google pros and cons of, name your issue, and that will normally pull up some ideas. So if you're not sure, like, who would disagree, that can help you with that too. All right, I hope that this was a helpful overview for today if you're doing the documentary response. And yeah, all right.